whole week has been. Yes, we're here. We're live. The initialization took a long time. Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and Sicarian infiltrators to that 6+++ show. This is the single most special episode of this show we've ever done because it's on the wrong day, because all hell's broken loose. We've had all sorts of scheduling. We've had cars not working. We've had the world throwing the kitchen sink at us, but we are here and we are very excited because we've got LGT looming. We've got a whole new meta to try and speculate upon and make sense of. And we also have my lovely boss from Goonhammer, Wings, with us tonight. Wings, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. It's been a strange week for me as well, but I'm excited to talk about Warhammer.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think that's what we'll try and do. Put the worries and unpredictabilities of the real world aside for one moment. And you, Wings, of course, will be playing at the LGT as well. Are you looking forward to that?
Well, yes, I'm very excited. It's alarmingly close. I've been feverishly workshopping whether I want to make any last minute changes to my list or not with the
yes,
Discord, which is what everyone's doing, I assume.
Yes, yeah, there is a lot of that going around. You will see, as I say, Jack and I, in our 6++ chat, we're seeing colleagues and comrades in different states of preparedness and uncertainty about the directions they want to take. But what they certainly all are is very excited. And obviously, this is going to be a huge event, 1,200 people. And in a field like that, it's really hard to cover all your bases. So, we'll do what we can. And hopefully tonight we can equip you with some ideas about the sorts of things you might see, the sorts of directions some of our menaces and armies might be going in. I'm also joined tonight by my lovely teammate Jack, and I can see he's busily hobbying something. So Jack, how are you and what are you hobbying?
I'm hobbying a Bullgrin. I'm trying to get my camera to focus as well.
Yes,
it's just not wanting to.
Oh yeah, you've gone blurred. Camera,
come on. There we go.
There we go. Well done, camera.
Yes,
so you're hobbying some Bullgrin.
Some Bullgrin.
There we go. Oh, he's pretty. At the moment.
Yeah, very nice. Procrastinating painting the last unit of my Tau army for LGT. By painting this instead. My week's been pretty chill, actually. I don't know about you guys. I've had a great time. Wow. Just painting, doing my own thing, staying at my own pace, just showing up when you tell me to. It's just pretty easy. But yeah, that's what my week's been. Occasional practice game. Pretty good.
Yeah, fantastic. And it's nice. It was nice seeing you cooking some Tau ideas. Obviously, we'll return to Tau. It'll be interesting to discuss Tau at some point tonight, I think, as we rattle through the armies and where they're at. But obviously, they did get a little buff, didn't they? And a few points drops here and there on units I know you're a fan of. So that must be quite nice going into the event, feeling like there's a little bit more wind in the sails.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm definitely excited to put them on the board again.
Yeah.
I know it's one of those things where it's like 40 points. You're really excited about it, and it's like is it
I
that
can
much?
take a unit out that I already want, and I can get 2 units that I obviously wanted less before. Let's do it. Let's go.
I had similar with mine in that my list was 15 points down after the changes, and to be honest, 15 points is just enough to encourage you to make bad rather than necessarily actually helping.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to wear that 1985 and get on with your life, but it's always tempting. Right? It's always tempting, and that's what they're trying to do, right? Push our buttons. So,
but yeah, as much as I meme on it, I am super happy with the changes, and I am glad to be playing Tau for this LGT. It's like a capstone for me. I'm going to be switching over to Guard for the next year, probably at least.
Okay.
After this event, so this makes a nice capstone. Finish the season on Tau, and then that feels very, very neat to me. And then you go on to the next.
Yeah, I think that's how I feel about GSC having done the WTC. I was like, you know what, that might be enough. GSC. It's been a really GSC couple of years, and it was time to free myself up and play some.
The opposite. I've been on Necrons for most of the summer for team events. So
you have
now back on my beloved Aeldari, so I'm raring to go. I'm excited.
Yeah,
it's fun.
I treated myself to some Aeldari Glasshammer, and it was just the best feeling in the whole world. It's just so stupid. It's so good. It's such a lot of fun. Okay, you the chat, shout us out. Let us know what you're up to. I'd love to hear from you. We'll do a tiny bit of roundup promotion, but I'm keen for us to just get stuck into our main topic because we've got Wings here, and I want to utilise that big old brain. So if you can shoot some questions in the chat for him, he'd love that. We'd love that. You can super chat if you like. We are mercenaries. We'll prioritise the hell out of you, and there should be some questions in the Discord as well. So we'll be getting into the meta at large. Before we do that, just a little bit of self-promotion because we are very good at self-promotion, possibly the best. We've got tons of videos flying out. The team are energized. As soon as the sun goes away, people remember how much they love Warhammer. That's what I always find. I think this is the time of the year where everyone cracks on. Chris, our very own beloved Capitan, is churning out UME and UKTC. This is a guide to playing on the UKTC mission pack. He's trying to get all the missions reviewed before the event itself, so he's pushing those out really well. And they're excellent. Chris has a really good eye for terrain and how to make the most on it. So do go and check those out. Our very own Harley Scully has put out a video saying AdMech are the best army in the game now. Is he right? We'll find out. Me and Ed did a Votann tier list a couple of days ago that was actually really fun to do, reviewing all the units in the new Votann book as well. So there's lots and lots of stuff going out at the moment. And obviously it is worth a plug. If you like to eat your lunch on a Monday and not talk to your colleagues and instead hear about toy soldiers and the maths related to those toy soldiers, we have a Monday lunchtime show now that the lovely Chris, Ed and Jack Tite, our nemesis / best mate, are running. So definitely get involved and go and have a listen to that if you're at a loose end on a Monday lunchtime as well. Okay, wonderful. That's it from us. I think we'll dive into the main event now, which is thinking about where this meta is going. It's been, I think the summer meta and the WTC meta was quite a stark one, quite a polarizing one in a whole bunch of ways, but there were also little promising and menacing bubbles of what might be. I suppose if we start with the meta that's just been hopefully knocked on the head and sent on its way, Wings, that might be quite an interesting thing to reflect on. If we think about the last few months, I guess from a you and me standpoint on competitive innovations, having a look, but also from the Goonhammer stats department, what sorts of features define the meta that we're just coming out of, and do you think it's been put to rest? I think that's quite an interesting question.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting one. Obviously, we've had the unusual sort of aspect of a change a few weeks back to Knights of Death Guard, which have shaken things up quite a bit.
Yes.
Prior to that, obviously, those armies were overly dominant, which defined quite a lot of the summer. But so since then, I think there's basically been I suppose the good news is that since then there've been a lot of different things winning events. So it isn't just there's only one army winning events. There are some armies I'll get to in a second that have been taking too many of the top slots, too high win rate. But it's been a very broad suite of stuff that people have picked up and had a go with. And I think some of the I guess the other thing that's been interesting about it is there's definite feel with some factions that people have been that it's taking people longer to really nail the lists that work.
Yes.
And that there have been some factions that have been really gaining momentum without any actual change to them. I mean, obviously, the taking out some of the big hitters in the metagame helps them. But I think particularly Guard, Sisters, and Tau all felt like they had a little bit of momentum ahead of the data slate just from people refining their lists. We've actually had quite a few Tau winners in the last few weeks, mostly using lists with lots of Crutox Rampagers, so potentially the changes will open that up a bit more widely. But I think Tau have been getting a bit of momentum. Guard, funny that you're painting Bulgrin. People seem to have remembered that Bulgrin are good again. Long period, people just weren't using them, but
got a point drop.
We're back to Bulgrin, and that makes Guard pretty strong. I mean, Guard seem pretty good, and I think that's better reflected in the data slate because there's really not that much change to them. And then Sisters are a bit of a weird one. They haven't been doing fantastically at win rate, but there have been a good solid clip of people making good finishes with them. I know I've talked about it before, that the power of the army rule is so high that if you know what you're doing in practice with them, you can really make them go. But even there's been people pulling out combos. So I've started seeing the enhanced jump canoness and Zephyrim in builds from Hallowed Martin really just in the last few weeks, despite the fact that I think you could do since the last data slate, but suddenly
that was the buffs that came through right in the last slate.
But it's only in the last few weeks people have suddenly gone, oh yeah, we could go and blender a whole bunch of stuff with this. Let's do that.
Do we think there's a sort of pre-slate like speculation factor that happens? Do you think people start cooking with things where they're like, I wonder where this will be in a few weeks' time, and actually, I think when we get close to
it, you do often see a little bit when people think the slate is really imminent. You do tend to see a little bit of a drop off of the very top factions as people try things out. There is often a little dip in the very top stuff just before a data slate, as you say. People want to try other things, and they know. The broken stuff's solved. They're not interested in it.
It's not interesting, right? Yeah, completely. And I mean, I guess you mentioned three of the villains of the piece from the meta just gone, which is Death Guard and the two flavors of Knights. And I guess from your standpoint, I'm curious, really, like exactly in a statistical and competitive sense, how much of a sort of global problem actually were these factions? These are obviously ones that people had a lot to say about and people had a lot of strong feelings about. And then, do you think the changes now, points and rules changes, all told, get them back under control, or is it still up in the air?
So I think the honest answer with them is that the win rates were just too high across the board, and Death Guard were taking too many top finishes. I mean, that was very clear in the data. The win rates of all of the factions, would have. So I mostly look at stats by the week because that's how I process them for doing the column.
Yeah,
but all three of those factions had weeks where they would touch 60%.
Yes,
and we're still and one of the really alarming things with that too is when you have multiple factions doing that well at the same time.
Yes,
that really indicates everyone else being frozen out, because it's really hard to be a high 50s win rate faction when there's a 60% win rate faction in the meta game.
Yes.
So that in particular, so in general, we did have some weeks where Death Guard spiked up to the sort of the high 50s or 60s. In general, Death Guard were hovering more in the 55 range, but with a very high play rate. So the other thing we pay attention to when thinking about how we feel about the meta game with results is, well, if something's doing really well, is it doing really well with lots of people playing it, or is it just like a few people doing it? So an example of that this week, Sisters actually spiked up massively, but there were only 8 Sisters players out.
Yeah,
There's just a few Sisters players going sicko mode and and taking down some events. And you see that with Drukhari whenever Skari picks them up as well.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
But with Death Guard, what we were seeing was that it's just every week it was between 8 and 10% of the meta game, and still holding to the mid 50s, which is incredible. When again, 60% is the number that gets everyone excited, but holding mid 50s when you're 10% of the meta game is also a real outlier. And
it's terrifying, right?
Consider the sample size stuff there.
So
they were definitely a problem. I mean, again, we only have a few weeks of data after the change to look at. I think the impression I get is Death Guard have hit what looks like a pretty healthy win rate. I mean, they're back down to near dead on 50% in the last few weeks of data.
Okay.
That not too much more change to them was probably the right move.
I
think they've got the flexibility and they've got the units that they won't drop off because of other things getting buffed up. But I think they've clearly hit them to pretty much the right spot. And thus I think no further change to them probably was the right call. Knights have dropped off a bit more, and I think I'm a bit more worried about them. So Imperial Knights obviously are in flux because they've got the new book coming.
So they've got the book and Valor Strike.
I think with that hit to that, I think the book is good, but I think it probably ends up a bit below where they currently are now that they've made those changes to Valor Strike. I could be wrong on that. I'm not a Knight faction specialist. I think on balance, though, losing the Feel No Pain without that those really broken plays to replace it probably takes them a bit below. And then Chaos Knights, I think, are in... Chaos Knights are probably the least happy with where they are with those, because I think my opinion is they've made the wrong changes there. In that I basically think builds with 2 or 3 multi-Gatling despoilers are still very, very strong.
Wildly good.
Basically nothing else is now, which is a real problem. I feel like they've missed an opportunity to reset the eternal balance there. The problem with that book was the Gatling despoilers in Infernals after the change. The points were too low before as well. After the changes, the only remaining problem was that they haven't hit that. They've made some changes elsewhere. Lords of Dread was already, I think, essentially a trap from the point of view of keeping the win rate up. So nerfing that is going to hurt.
It's a bit like kneecapping the Gatekeeper detachment. Really seemed like a strange choice.
I mean, I can see the argument that it wasn't. I think it's not just win rate that decides these things. Part of it is whether it's fun to play against. I think you could argue that the inevitability of when you're losing a game against Lords of Dread, the way that
it's that lockout of a whole chunk of board.
Really fun way of playing the game, and I think maybe they were worried about that in particular with challenger cards going away. But I don't think the army needed a nerf on that basis, and I think I think basically people are still going to have bad games into the Gatling despoilers.
100% they are.
and I don't think anything else is really good there now. So I feel like they've missed on the internal balance for them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Jack, you've been out playing into this meta, as have I, uphill at times. How have you felt about it, and do you think the changes are proportionate to these factions?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have kind of given a very similar opinion to what I'm going to give now, which is Death Guard a little bit under hit, and then probably a little bit over hit on the CK.
Yeah, okay.
It's kind of like the prevailing opinion. I mean, I definitely think Death Guard got under hit. I mean, I spoke about this before. Like, I always prioritize rule changes over points changes in these situations. That's just the way I tend to look at it. So not getting any rules changes for the Death Guard was pretty disappointing. And I think the points changes were quite middling. Like, I don't think they were that severe. I think whenever we saw them, we were expecting them to come with some rules changes in addition to that when they came out early. And then the Knight stuff, I think Imperial Knights are going to be pretty solid. Maybe not world ending, I don't think, at the moment.
No, not now, I don't think, no.
Potentially they could. I mean, they may be able to find a combination of Forge World data sheets and Canis that just ruins everyone's lives for a couple months. That might be a thing. I'm also not very well versed in Imperial Knight lore. Not lore, but like, the annals of the codices. So I'm not sure if that's going to be the case or not. And then CK, I mean, I do think they've been hit pretty hard, but I think they're kind of occupying the space they probably should occupy. I'm sorry to say, Chaos Knights. I feel like it's one of those armies which shouldn't really ever be top of the meta just because it's such an unfun playstyle. It's kind of like we can't make you balance, so you get to be bad, right? Kind of situation with them. I think they just kind of, the way that Codex is written, they kind of design themselves into a hole that kind of creates a bad playstyle experience. So I don't think Chaos Knights are going to be I think they're going to sit in the same spot they did before they got all their changes and the Codex came out. To be honest, they're just going to be that occasional thing that comes along. They'll be in team events to ruin a day.
I was going to say, I think as a teams list now, they sit still in a phenomenal place because of the kinds of things they like to shoot and how much of that them is going to be around now.
I'm hoping more than anything, but I don't think they're going to be shredding the singles scene up too much.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see for sure. And as I said, it'd be interesting to see if people go hard into the Knights for something like LGT, or if people decide that's too much of a risk with all of the unknowns.
I hope not.
I think there's some other honourable mentions, I suppose, from the top of the meta. I think one of them stands a little bit aside from the others in that Thousand Suns, where I think it's an interesting thing, Wings. I think anecdotally and behind the scenes in practice, when we were prepping over the summer, Thousand Suns felt extremely strong. I'm curious if that's played itself out at the top of the singles scene in a statistical sense in the same period.
So they basically had a terrible matchup into Death Guard.
And that was their issue.
Wait, So I think Thousand Suns were a weird one because, on paper, extremely strong. Definitely, on paper, too strong. But bad matchup into the best Death Guard lists has kept them down. And you do see that reflected in the last few weeks that since Death Guard got their hit, Death Guard are down to I've just gone back to the last few weeks, pretty rock solid on 50% week after week since their hit, which is where you want to be. Whereas Thousand Suns rocketed upwards to be one of the top factions.
So actually, these adjustments, although they felt harsh, probably are
needed. That's not quite. So I was going to say they definitely needed a change. They didn't need the level of double tap they got.
It was the classic double tap.
I don't. My feeling with them is if you were going to make that change to the army rule, I would probably only have hit like the Sanger Enlightened, obviously extremely stupid for 80 points for 6. They need to go up by a lot. I mean, 30 points. It's arguably right. Like that was just stupid. They ever got out the door at the cost they did. But I think if you're going to make this big change to the army rule as well, while buffing some other factions out there, I think I would probably have gone a bit softer elsewhere. I mean, maybe the basic source were up 10 points just because people were spamming that to the exclusion of everything else, which is never a great place to be. But I think you maybe with the army rule change, you maybe needed it to go up by the list to go up by sort of in the region of, somewhere between 80 and 120 points. Instead, they've gotten, they're taking I did some math on a few lists, somewhere in the region of 170 to 200 points, which is a big hit. So for context, I was talking to someone about this earlier in the week. It actually isn't as big a hit as Death Guard got. So Death Guard, the top lists were taking 250 point hits. And like the minimum hit to lists that dodged the changes really well was still like 150 points. Those are ones that already had Mortarion. So the hit on Thousand Suns points wasn't as harsh, but the hit on the army rule at the same time is so harsh. So hard to combine those two things at once, and I think that was
the point and rules hit at the same time is always very vicious. Yeah, Jack, I feel like you have thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, I think the big difference between Death Guard and Thousand Suns is that Death Guard have a lot of room to pivot to other detachments and units in their codex, and I don't think Thousand Suns have that same opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think that those hits, even though they are bigger for Death Guard, it hurts them less because they can still just not play the vehicle-heavy Hammer Mortarion lists, go more into the like Plague Marines and stuff, and they can still have like a viable build. But I don't know if when you start taking out all the stuff that got nerfed for Thousand Suns, if they have such a depth of good units in there.
I don't think that's quite what happened with Death Guard, because I think if we went through this, like you had to be really skewed to get that floor of 150 points. You basically had to already be on Mortarion and a Demon Prince and MSU Plague Marines without characters. That was basically the only way you could dodge everything. And even then, you were still taking 150 points. So they were quite careful. Like even if you were taking 10 model Plague Marines, both the leaders that people were double attaching got point increases. And I think the other thing with Death Guard is that actually it's been the same list in 3 different detachments rather than
a lot of the same units. Yeah,
it's been very similar lists across 3 different detachments. You are definitely seeing people moving a bit more towards. So you've definitely seen a quick spike up in the basic Virulent Vectorium, because that's the best spot for Mortarion and Demon Prince, which are the units that didn't go down that had the highest value. That didn't go up in points that had the highest value. But I don't necessarily think. I don't actually necessarily think it's a case that they had room to pivot. I think it's just that they were so undercosted that you could hit the whole army for 200 points and it was still fine.
I think in terms of a rules chassis, though, I think the wider point about detachments is very valid, which is that Death Guard had different directions to go other than Hammer, and Thousand Suns feels very wedded to Grand Coven, right? Or seems to have been. I've not seen a ton else.
I think Rubikai Phalanx and the vehicle one, whose name escapes me, both play. I mean, we've seen. There's been a decent number of 4-1 lists bouncing around for the vehicle one.
That's interesting.
Has taken, I think, a couple of undefeateds and is doing all right. And with Scarabs, big Scarabs going down, I can certainly see people trying.
Yeah, so that's where the compensatory buff might be relevant, right? Because they got a little drop on the Terminators for sure. Yeah, that's an interesting one. And then I guess the other 2 armies that came to mind from our sort of top of meta before, I mean, there's a bunch of Horde and teams and skewed lists that we'll come back to in some form later, but Aeldari and GSC were both having a very good time in the latter months before this all happened. And obviously, there's a sort of lobby probably of players from those factions, myself included, who say, well, that's partly because of the meta and what was there and what they were able to hunt. But actually, I think the raw power and strength of those armies was pretty juiced and pretty effective as well, and they were both armies that presented very real challenges. So I guess, how do you feel about them, and do you feel that the changes, I mean, I know what I think about the changes for the 2 factions and where it leaves them. What do you think this is going to mean for them?
So I must admit, Gene's I'm leaving to you to understand what's happened with
I think they took a really nasty...
Well, I mean, I guess that's reassuring, because they were
very good on the stats, huge on the stats.
And I think the Horde host builds in particular are another one of those shutout builds that could just make people not have a game. So I guess I'm slightly reassured you think they've taken a big hit, because quietly,
they have.
They are the. I know when we first looked at it, we were looking at the change to Back to the Shadows and wondering if that salvaged it quite a bit for it. But I think the Primus change and the points change.
If they hadn't changed the Primus change, I would be here saying they were probably side graded. But the Primus, I think makes a big difference.
But I think they needed a fairly big hit. I think that they will. And then Aeldari, I mean, it obviously kills me to say it, but yeah, they didn't hit Aeldari quite hard enough. I think the 30 Swooping Hawks lists were the best, so it's good for 30 Swooping Hawks, but up 60 points. That was a hit. But I think if you look at the lists, such a high proportion of them start Janezar, Lycus, Wagon.
Yeah.
And pretty much all of them. Certainly mine for LGT does. I think basically it's difficult to argue that those 3 should have gone up 10 points each. You probably, and then you again, the other challenge with it is you probably do need to then look at a few other things as well. I think the challenge with Aeldari is they've gotten better this edition, and they've now got the balance lever of when you've got different size units, you can do point scaling differently.
Yes,
that's a good balance lever to have. I think one of the challenges with Aeldari is that it's actually different numbers of the same MSU give different value to the list, because I think one of the problems you hit with balancing them is that I think 95 points is probably fine for a unit of Warp Spiders, but I think 3 units of Warp Spiders for 95 points each is probably a problem. Because I think there's a couple of different styles that are really performing at the moment. You've got the Warhost builds that so Folga Pal's one really big US
I saw that, yes.
With that, and we've seen other lists similar to that since then, winning events. So those are essentially Warhost builds, 2 keep away units that bounce in and out of transports, because you can do that twice in Warhost. You've got Eldrad, or if you use Azaman as one of them, because they've got both Skybolt Sanctuary and Fire and Fade, so you can keep 2 safe, and then just supplement that with 3 MSUs each of Hawks and Spiders, and that just gives you so much redundancy in board control and scoring that it's really able to play against. And then the other option is Aspect Host, which is just, you put the good Phoenix Lords in, you put a big Fire Dragon Bomb in, and then you've got...
And you put a big crater in them, basically.
And again, the best Aspect Host lists were the Hawk ones. They did take a hit.
Yeah, for sure.
Every single list, again, I've been playing around with my list trying to think, do I want to try Asman? It says I've ended up not changing out for Asman. No, every single list that's really trying starts with those 3 Phoenix Lords. That clearly indicates, and the win rate is too high. Therefore, that's where you've got to look. They should have gone up 10 points each. I don't quite know what else you change, because I do think Eldar are weirdly brittle to you suddenly change one too many thing and then they fall off a cliff. But I think it's very difficult. I think you could definitely make that change safely. It wouldn't have killed the faction. It might have pulled them down a little bit. I don't quite know why they didn't.
Yeah, makes sense. Jack, what do you think?
I was really surprised to see no changes to the Fire Dragons in particular, but also the 3 common Phoenix Lords not getting any change was pretty surprising. The Hawks choice is really interesting, because up to this point, my understanding is that all the other players were saying that's really good on WTC, but less good on UKTC and GW.
It's very hard to maneuver the multiple big bricks of Hawks on UKTC. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how much of a difference that's going to be. I am super interested in what's going on with the Aeldari at the moment, because I've been keeping an eye on various other content creators and stuff and what they've been saying about Aeldari, and there seems to be a bit of a mix. Some people seem to think they're just not going to be good because of what the upcoming meta is going to be, and other people seem to be thinking, well, they're going to be one of the dominant forces. And that's like across the whole spectrum of like top players out there that I've been able to get access to on YouTube and Discord. So I'm really interested to see what they're doing.
This is actually a curve we've been round with this book a couple of times already, and I think the flexibility and the depth of tools in this book is when we talk about really deep books, this actually is a deep book, right? This is not some throwaway comment to say. It's got a lot of different things it can draw on, and I do feel like with Eldar, when you make adjustments, there's a bit of a liminal phase where it's almost like we're putting one bit of the Swiss Army knife back in and then working out which bit we need to get out next. And I think Eldar is a lot like that. I think Eldar's capacity to adapt is significant.
There's no world in which they're not good, as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly.
I think you can argue whether they're. I think yes, they definitely did a good job of preying on big night lists. I got to play against Lords of Dread with my Fire Dragon Aspect host list, and it was a very enjoyable experience that didn't take very long.
Yes, it
was. But so you can argue that was a factor, but I think equally they could struggle into Mortarian's Hammer just because of the sheer amount of redundancy and stuff that list had and just grinding them out. So I don't think there's the stuff you could do with them on the board. I don't think there's any world where they're not at least good. I think there's as you say, there's whole layers of stuff that people haven't even touched. And Guardian Battle Host has real builds that occasionally pop up.
Wind Host does as well.
Wind Rider Host, certain metagame arises. Wind Rider Host is suddenly great. Like if Boys Horde suddenly turns up, then the Eldar are going to be getting on their bikes and shredding them. I think there is a lot of depth there. There are some units that are a bit underwhelming, but there's enough depth for good stuff. I don't see any world in which they're not pretty good. I think certainly there are some things that I think are boosted up by the Dataslate that could be tough for them. I think AdMech could be tough for them. I think Orcs could be tough for them. I think there's certainly some stuff that could keep them in check. So
I can only assume that that's the rationale for the light treatment, is the awareness that those other changes are for armies that are tough for them.
Yeah, so I'm holding.
But that's the classic sympathetic balancing of elves.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Holding judgment on whether they're too good or merely good, but
I
don't think there's any world in which what they are now they're bad. Like
not at all. No. And I said there will just be aspect host was something that loads of people tried initially when the book came out, deemed not suited to the time. Ynnari then turned out to be, and then we're back here and we pivoted back around. I think the book just has the capacity
it's been an interesting one too. It's been a bit like what I was talking about earlier with Guard and Tau, just evolving over time. Like a lot of the things the best Aeldari builds are doing now, you've always been able to do since.
I think a lot of those units were like the first things people tried and just didn't quite figure out how it all fitted together.
Yeah, so it's been interesting to see that, but yeah, I think there's obviously, I mean, I like playing Aeldari. I'm looking forward to it.
It's great.
I've got the avatar on my list as a little bit of some weighted training avatar, because I think probably spamming MSUs is probably the way to go. But I prefer to have something to anchor my list around. I find it a bit easier to plan and play when I've got something to focus around.
Yeah, for sure.
I will say I've taken SMS on every single unit possible. Just saying.
Good. You know who you don't like, Jack. It's fine. Mm-hmm. I understand it. I think
it's a safety precaution.
From a GSC standpoint, but just to return to that, I mean, I think I suspect host will still continue to have some degree of play, because a lot of the things that made it so oppressive still exist. It's still bajillions of bodies. It's still bajillions of OC. It's still got 6-inch deep strike on decent shooting units. It's lost, I think, its single most dangerous activation, which hurts it. And I think Return to Shadows was, especially from a team's perspective, in its existing form, that was the statistical puzzle that gave you its pairing power in teams as well, knowing what could tap Neos and what couldn't, and pairing and pushing on that basis. It does hurt a bit losing that, but the tactical flexibility now might smooth it out in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, just being able to threaten starting unit on the board and putting it turn
that's the huge difference in terms of the turn one pressure, and that's actually something GSC obviously have not been a huge fan of, is the rush at you pressure, and being able to immediately hit a brick in reply is a big deal for sure.
Yeah, because I mean that was one of the scary things about them in the index, is that they could do that. So yeah, having that back is, at least it's a bit of a shake up, but it certainly gives them something.
I'm going to go slightly against the grain and say I don't think the GSC nerfs are that bad. I think the Primus nerf is, I mean, obviously it's a big nerf for that unit, but you were also running 3 Benefactors units, and they're all perfectly fine.
Yeah.
It's a nerf that matters a lot if you're trying to chunk through like knights and things, but once you're killing smaller units, it's not a disaster.
Though I do think one of the things that the change to Back to the Shadows does is it makes running lots of units with characters a bit weaker, because that was one of the ways you could get double use out of the units with characters, whereas now, if they're exposed, then they're probably going to die.
I think the biggest thing that I found, because I played GSC and Index, and then they got their codex, and I decided that I didn't want that army anymore after the codex.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I didn't want to invest in the army and the codex, is what I mean. And the biggest thing that I found is that I had a lot less agency on the game when you didn't have the Return Shadows as it is now. So I think it's definitely going to be a lot worse at like high levels of play, like where you were playing, Tom, where people like Innis were playing, like at the WTC level. It's definitely going to be worse up there. I think for people just generally playing host, I think they're going to have more options and tools to play with.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't think it's generally going to be like, oh yeah, GC are way stronger. I don't think that detachment is totally doomed though. I think it's
no.
It's a bit mediocre. But yeah,
they don't have another detachment that does what that one does, right? They don't have another genuine ranged detachment, and it still is very, very potent. And again, it slightly, probably, if anything, it slightly changes the profile of armies it's most keen to play against, but it's still very dangerous into a lot of different things. And it loves elf varieties, for example, like it's always done. And I don't think that changes, because it didn't need the Primus Spirit to kill elves, right? It was not lacking for damage into those sorts of armies. I think things like Xenocreed and Biosanctity will get a bit of a look out. As for the UK, I think Bio was fine. On UKTC, I don't think Xenocreed works particularly well. I've tried it out a little bit in the last week or two to see, and it's been middling. But I think Final Day really interests me a little bit. I do think there's the combination of new Raveners and Final Day is not one that I think people have actually looked at in as much depth. And I think there's some interesting stuff there.
4-1 list with it. The odd better performance, but yeah, there's certainly a decent number of people trying it out and getting something from it. And the new Ravenous, they work well though. New Ravenous seem to be a real high risk, high reward unit because they die very easily, but there are some really dominant performances with them as well.
Yeah, they're a real glass cannon of a unit, that one.
It's just waiting for someone to crack the list and perform with it, right? Like to just. I
think that's 100% it, and it does still have these annoying internal levers of stuff like you run out of Tyranids, you run out of buffs, but the fact that the Tyranids you're using are also doing damage now, I think helps Final Day massively in terms of its appeal and its effect compared to how it was before. So yeah, I mean, I think that was the sort of top set, I suppose, as far as I was conscious, Wing. So I suppose if we're speculating ahead and thinking about what the sort of the slate itself opens up, what do you think some of the main pathways you're expecting to see are, and what in the first sort of initial responses have you seen people sort of starting to pivot towards, do you think?
So again, I think it's new enough that we don't have the data yet. Like I mostly get my data through seeing event results. But I think I guess the first thing to consider is the other one that I think probably dodged past the data slate a bit unscathed, which is the Black Templar builds.
Oh yes, Black Templars is popping up a lot
this time around. They got the opportunity to be the army that was just a bit too new to get a sort of holistic look. Like with the Knights Codex, they've shown that they're willing to look at something that looks just unfun on paper and change it, which is good. But I think the Black Templar builds, there have been quite a few people winning events with them already. And I think it's the combination of the Little Sword Brethren units and Rep X is just being so good on rate for those lists. Plus the fact that you can take an enhancement on the Emperor's Champion, which that's the sort of thing I might have expected to see them go, "Ooh, we didn't actually mean you to be able to do that very quickly." Maybe they did. The value you can get for these really small units that you can then protect and keep safe with reactive move back into their transports and so on. There are things that will kill it. I do wonder if maybe the Aeldari actually have a pretty good game into that.
I think they do.
They can kill a Repex and if those Sword Brethren are on the ground, then the Aeldari will take them to pieces. So that might keep them in check, but I do think it's surprising to look at what Space Wolves got, which I think was probably about right. But then look at Space Wolves and Black Templars, both performing really strongly right now, both with fairly clearly defined things that are doing well. Space Wolves just got a little bit of a nip and tuck to keep them under control. Black Templars didn't. So I think Templars probably scoot through a little bit too unscathed. The other one is, there's a little tiny hit on the Stormraven, Gilliman Ultramarine lists, but as far as I'm concerned, that is consistently one of the best Marine lists.
Yes.
And I think it's there are a few lists out there that I think would do better if more people played them. As far as I'm concerned, that's one of the best lists in the game. Not enough people are playing it, and it continues to be very strong. So I expect that to be a survivor from the previous meta game. That's a real threat still.
Yeah, there's quite incredible depth of options for Marines now. And one of the other ones I'm hearing a lot of excitement around is the Raven Guard detachment that's just come out. There seems to be a lot of people who are very positive about some combinations and some players with that. But obviously, I'm still waiting to see that make any kind of splash.
Well, but it was, so actually there has already been at least one 4-1 list. I can't remember if it was a 4-1 or another feature go past my desk with it. But yeah, it was both the characters, the new detachment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. It was a good detachment anyway. Advanced charge on a big block of Vanguard veterans.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not much else you need to know, really.
No, exactly that.
Take a bad strat and you swap it out for advanced charge with your Van Vets.
And Marines just kind of slot under. They have just been consistently good the whole way through this time period we've just talked about. They've had some nudges here and there, but they are just still plugging away in surprisingly consistent fashion, right? For a faction that often dips in and out across an edition, they've just been great.
Yeah, I mean, they have just been solid. Well, I think it's just because Gladius is such a strong detachment. I think we were actually, so right back at the start of the edition, we were worried that you look at the Index Marines and you go, what can you possibly write as a detachment that ever competes with this? Because this just does everything you want. And I think that hasn't played out. I think lots of other stuff gets used. But you do still see week in, week out some top finishes with Gladius Task Force, and I think that's
you do.
It does everything. It does everything you could want from a detachment, and they've got enough data sheets that there's always something that's good. So it means that there's always a baseline solid marine list you can build at very worst.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that then takes us beyond and into new things or re-emerging things. And there's a couple of armies that come to mind of the chaotic variety that I think we're both starting to have people sniffing around, and indeed had some people making a go of it at WTC, but obviously now are sitting in interesting places, which would be Emperor's Children and World Eaters. I suppose in a single standpoint, it might be a little bit different for them, but I'm curious what you think the picture is for these two, but as sort of the pressure rushy type armies that people often invoke as something that might be emerging. How likely do we think this actually is?
I think they should just both be fine. I think they're probably both in a healthy place. I don't. I'm sure famous last words here. I don't think I'm overpowered. The Emperor's Children build is definitely it's a hell of a list to play against because it is so fast and so deadly if you let it be. But there is always an element of if you let it be.
Yes,
and obviously the first time anyone plays against it, certainly my experience of it is you're going to fuck up at least once and get completely rolled by something.
Get run over.
But I think it's it's very, very strong, but there are ways to kill it. And I kind of feel the same about World Eaters because I think the melee buffs on them are good. I think it's nice to get some stuff back. It has been one of those slightly weird ones where the last few weeks we have actually seen 8-bound rising up anyway, even without the changes to them. But I don't think I don't feel like it pushes them too far. And I think the hit on Forge Fiends is a real one because I just don't think there's anything else in the roster that does what the Forge Fiends do. So I think you can't really avoid taking that 40-point hit for at least two of them.
I agree. I'm hearing a lot of World Eaters players talking about taking them out, and I do find that kind of crazy, given how much that changes it for them.
Yeah, I think I think people will try it and they'll come back to two because I don't think anything else does what they do. I think they do a lot for the army, and I think some of the other builds too, like the Damon Kim build, even more must have them. It relies on them to set up the Bloodletter combos.
Completely. Derek Macy in the chat has a question for us, by the way, asking, do you think Warp Meld Pact is any good? Where's Warp Meld Pact?
No, I don't.
I don't think it is, no.
I think I feel a bit sorry for it because there was some interest there out the gate, and then people found the weird targeting sequencing thing, which got shut down very quickly, and then which I think there was still essentially, I think potentially there was still some scope to explore it with the points as were, but people just settled on Grand Covenants just doing everything you want. Grand Covenant had a bit of the Gladius Task Force problem that it kind of just did everything that you want, and if you want to play a horde build, there's other armies that can do it better. So I think it's a little bit. I think it was a little bit of a shame that it got taken out so quickly. I'd sort of like to see it come back, but I think with the changes it's had, that's the thing. I don't think it needed. I don't think. Again, it's the double tap. I don't think you needed the rules hit on Mutalisk as well, because that's right. They changed Mutalisk to not work with it as well when they changed the goats, didn't they? So again, like the pulling stuff so you couldn't be targeting, that was clearly stupid. That clearly wasn't how they were intending the game to be played. It needs to be shut down. I don't know why they did a nerf at the same time as for that when they haven't for other things. For the
because the detachment wasn't boasting out per se, right?
Useless were too cheap, but points got up now, so that would be fine.
Yeah, completely that. So yeah, I mean, I think those were all emergent players. So thinking about World Eaters, thinking about Infantry, and those are both armies that I think people were looking at and excited about. And as you say, actually, not sure how far the envelope's actually moved on those. They are really good, but they are specialised in a particular way. And World Eaters is an especially interesting one to me because a lot of people in the world I operate in have been talking about their power for a long time, but as you say, in a win rate sense and an outcome sense, they've been straight down the line the whole time.
Been pretty good. Like they've been putting up a couple of wins. Liam's playing them at the moment. He's bringing them to RGT. He's having a great time with them. But they're a 50% faction. I think that's an important thing to say is I do think after these changes there are a lot of 50% factions. Like it's a wide open metagame. There are some things that are strong, but there are a lot of things that can beat. So.
And that's a really interesting thing. That's exactly how I feel about it. I feel like that rock, paper, scissors effect is why people feel certain things are so good, but actually in the wider field, they have their answers and they have their counters. Right?
And I think they've actually so there's a story I told, which is the very first impression I got of 10th when we got a preview of it for Goonhammer was we got to do some preview games and me and Liam's first impression of it was wow. The power level on this is crazy. And that turned out to be because we'd been given the Aeldari and Necron indexes to do our games with, effectively. And it turned out that there were certainly some factions like that, but I think we are kind of at a point now where lots of factions do stuff that feels crazy good, crazy powerful, really exciting. But they all end up, but there are ways to play around them. You do big exciting things, but there are ways to come back from them and respond to them. So I think we're in a pretty good spot, and I think both World Wizards and Emperor's Children firmly go into that pile where they do really cool and exciting things. They do things the faction ought to do. I think maybe you could argue that the internal balance on Emperor's Children isn't great, but
I think that it's just between detachments. It seems.
Even then, Flawless Blades getting an extra attack. There've been the odd person trying the I can't remember what it's called, the more just down the line damage one with Flawless Blades. So you might see a bit more of that tried as well. But yeah,
I'd like to. Yeah,
I don't think they're both. I think they're both in a fine spot. I think if we're going to see new stuff, it's going to be one of the two factions that got the really big buffs.
And here we go. That's where we want to take it next. But Jack, did you have any thoughts on that before we move it forward?
I was going to move it forward, actually. I had a question about another
perfect. Okay, go for it.
So the one that I'm really interested in at the moment, for me as an upcomer, is Orcs. Because I think Orcs have a kind of a similar kind of play pattern to a lot of these aggro pressure melee builds. But what they don't have that Templars and EC, they have what they do have is they have a completely different defensive profile. So I feel like they could be a lot harder to deal with because you can take the same kind of weapons and deal with Templars and EC and World Eaters and all these things, but you can't do that for Orcs. So I think they could potentially play spoiler pretty well in this meta. I'm really interested to see how they come forward.
Yeah, I mean, Orcs. Again, we went through the changes the Orcs got, and my eyes bulged out of my skull. In particular, I mean, the Gauss change, it cannot be. The Gauss change is such a huge change.
It's completely insane what happens.
Because essentially the problem with Gauss before is he was a good unit, but the only thing you could guard, the only thing you could put in his way were Mega Knobs, and everything that kills all the stuff you just talked about kills Mega Knobs clean dead as well. Stuff that kills what you just talked about does not kill 20 boys stone dead. In War, potentially with a feel no pain. And that is it is such a transformation, and I think the big question mark is going to be, is that going to be too much? I mean, again, I'm willing to withhold judgment because it is the kind of thing you can adapt to. One of the changes I've made, one of the changes I've ended up making for my list for LGT, I haven't tried to go whole hog in dealing with that kind of army, but I have brought Eldrad in when I didn't have him before, just because I think you want options that give you a way to, in an emergency, oh no, the Orcs are too close to me, that I need to lift that.
I need +1 to wound.
I need +1 to wound. I need +1 to wound very badly right now, please. So I think there are things you can do about it, but it's very fast with all the buffs you can stack on it. Talking about what we had earlier, there's quite a few different detachments you can use it effectively with now as well.
You can.
And the fact that they got that alongside some point changes as well. When they also, there's a few people a few lists I've seen recently that have just been using, for example, Death Cops as just a utility unit because they're dirt cheap at 80 points now.
They are.
I think Orcs and then adding in, you get to split commander units, so you can have your 2 infiltrators rather than 1, and I think there's so much going on there that I think. I guess they're the faction I'd most look at and go, maybe this is a bit too much.
Yes.
But they were a bit behind before. They definitely needed some help. I'm delighted for Orc players that they get to have some cool, fun things.
And it's mostly not in a shooty style, and I feel like they've had quite a dominant year on the gun side of their roster, and now these are buffs that are aimed at the combat in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, although you can still you could comfortably back up. I can certainly imagine. I imagine people will try a bit hoardier first. But I can certainly imagine what ends up happening is that you take some of the tactical shells, just stick Gaz and 20 boys at the core of it, and then use the cheap shooting stuff around.
Yeah, for sure.
There's all sorts of ways you can go with them. I mean, again, because the Orc Codex is really cool. It has a lot of depth, a lot of flexibility, and they've had to give it a series of nerfs because there are a few things that were overcooked in it. There's still plenty of depth there though, and they've brought quite a lot of the points back to a place where you can really go with it. So there's there's a lot of stuff going on with Orcs.
Yeah.
Allowed. And I guess the other thing too is, if Aeldari end up near the top, there are certainly Orc builds that can make Aeldari very
Oh, 100%. Elves don't like the mass T5 very much.
Elves don't like getting rolled over, basically.
Yeah.
Or at least they don't like getting rolled over by Horde. They don't mind it if it's knights trying it because they just kill them. But they're less comfortable if it's a bunch of boys. And if someone's coming at me with a bunch of boys and gas, I can look at my 10-5 dragons and go, what are these for?
What are you doing, right? No, I think they're probably the one where, and again, it takes me back to exactly a year ago where Brian Sight was running through people with the 20-mans with the mech attached, and no one had seen that done. I think there'll be at least one, maybe two strange bonkers Orcs builds. Probably Brian on one of those,
Brian again,
ready to absolutely slap
with that.
Yeah. And so I think they're primed for that because, as you say, they've got the unknown factor. A lot of the other armies we've been talking about.
Yeah,
it's more the re-emergence of established things, right? Yeah, whereas something surprising will come out of this.
I do find it funny how you could have one of those circular flowchart things, right? Where we're back at the point of Orcs where we're all feeling pity for the Orcs. Oh, poor Orcs. Again. Oh, I hope James Workshop gives you something. And then they do, and they're like, whoa, not like that. Hang on a minute. Let's just nerf that again straight away. Next patch.
Give them a crumb after midnight. What could possibly happen? Oh, Christ. What's going on?
I think it would not shock me, let's say, if Gaz goes up a few points next time around.
Yeah.
Again, just the difference in even max Meganobs, everyone can kill 6 Meganobs. That's just the thing that they're so similar. They're like all the other tough stuff in the metagame, except without an invuln save. Great. Now,
I think it's the flexibility of profiles, which I think you alluded to, Jack, with an army like that, where you can actually have quite radically different types of units and problems in the list, and you can build a real puzzle in that sense, which is something I think EC especially really struggle with. At the end of the day, EC are a couple of types of unit, and everyone knows exactly what they are, and has got fairly au fait at dealing with them. The speed's a bit annoying, but beyond that, World Eater's a bit similar, but with a Blood Surge attached, right? So I think Orcs, there feels like a lot more ways to come at you sideways. And speaking of another army with an interesting mix of things going on right now, perhaps not quite as diverse as Orcs, but obviously AdMech have been handed the keys to the kingdom, Wings. Do you want to deduce what's gone on here and why we've decided to do this at this moment in time?
So I mean, in terms of why AdMech have been handed a giant buff, it's because they've tried everything else, and now they've given them another army's army rule as well as their own to see if that fixes it, and it might.
This time for sure.
I mean, I think again, I think it's fair enough to be bold with them because there have been okay builds in the more recent seasons. Like they've drip feeders, but you look at the problem with AdMech is that you look across the data sheets and you go, you can't make this shit any cheaper, but they're still not winning. So you do start having to go, what do you do about it? And so we've had big changes to their army rules before. That's helped a bit. We've had new detachments. Some of them have been okay. It's helped a bit, but it still just hasn't got there. So now it's bam, call has oats. Right, okay. So what are we doing with that? I mean, that it's obviously a step change unlike anything else. Like I've challenged the other players, and they have pointed out that actually, well, if you were doing like a full call castle with some of the shooting stuff, the reroll ones were actually technically better in some situations, like theoretically. But I think particularly when you've got so many things in the army with sustained hits too, including the infiltrators that got to glow up as well. Just being able to say, right, rerolls here. It doesn't need to be anywhere near cold. This is cool. This is where I'm having my rerolls. This is where I'm going to fish for my sustained hits. This is what I'm going to blow up. It's such a transformation for the army that there could be good things. And the other thing they can do too is one of the things you often see with Marine builds is quite successfully is they bring some stuff that just has rerolls all the time, so they don't have to worry about using oaths to boost that up. And then they use the oaths to help pick off stuff around the fringes, or if they need to go send out some melee stuff to kill it. And AdMech can do that as well, because the big breacher unit can have its rerolls anyway. So you've got that solid course, and there's also some there's weapon buffs, there's gun buffs, there's all sorts of things going on there. Again, in some ways there's a sort of learned effective. Oh yeah, they've buffed a bunch of stuff, but AdMech still can't possibly be good because they've buffed a bunch of stuff pretty much every day. And every time I say, well, they're a winner because they are technically, but every time they say, yeah, but they're still bad. I was like, well, yeah, technically that is true. So
it's like winning the cost of the scratch card back, right? Like you are a winner, but like...
I feel like this time around, like I think this has to get them somewhere. Like I think there has got to be a real competition here. I'd probably lean towards them. I don't know. It's really hard to tell with them because you also, again, with that, mate, you can put so much stuff on the board if you want to, and you can have quite different profiles for the stuff. I do wonder if you may suddenly find out that actually, if you can have what you had before, but with Call Behind a Wall giving everything, suddenly that is a level of, and I guess particularly the boosts back to having twin link, but the fact that you get wound rerolls back on some of their best stuff at the same time as giving them hit rerolls. That's the only aspect that worries me a little bit. I look at that and go, I don't know if I'd have added full hit rerolls and full wound rerolls to your best shooting platforms at the same time. Historically, that has often proven to be a mistake.
Yeah, it may well be. I think they sit in a really terrifying place, really, because they've had specialized and very deadly teams builds in score terms the whole time. Challenger cards going away. I mean, we talked about Orcs now, but they both like this, right? I think they both enjoy Challenger cards going away because they're both score suppressing armies with lots of stuff to throw away in pursuit of that goal as well. And so they, that suits them both. And AdMech can block you. A whole bunch of armies can just get completely blocked behind spindly bodies, and now you've got very real shooting output, picking off anything that's trying to deal with that and clear out. So we'll see. I mean, it is ultimately. It is not the most durable army, although it has its layers of defences. It is lads with 2 wounds and an invuln, but obviously Hunter Cohort is particularly stodgy when it needs to be in the crucial moments, and that's what I think is probably the most concerning is the feel no pain bricks blocking you in, basically.
And the fact that infiltrators will actually kill stuff now too.
So that's a unit that was in every AdMech list all the time already. So I'm very confused by that as a change.
Yeah, I mean, so they weren't spammed as much as some of the
No, not like they're going to be now.
But yeah, you look at that and go, okay, yeah, point of AP, and again, anything with sustained hits too loves full hit rerolls. So
yes,
the fact that they will actually kill something now is a very big difference.
Those and Ruststalkers gives you. I mean, there was a time when I remember AdMech had decent use out of both those units in the past.
Back to some of the 9th builds that were really strong. The veterans.
That's very much how it feels to me. Yeah, chickens, combat, and then just stuff everywhere and bats everywhere, and so it's going to be quite vicious, I think.
I think Rat Zone is also really going to be quite solid in this as well, because they have on-demand lethal hits, if I remember right, and they have an enhancement to give sustain to basically to any unit.
Yeah, so that is very nice with the rerolls.
Yeah, and you're quite right. Anything that lets you fish like that is great.
Yeah. Sounds like a lot of the buffs GSC no longer have, so that's fun.
The one thing about AdMech is I do wonder if, because they've had such a bad reputation for this edition, and it's such an expensive army to collect, if any of the top players are going to consider that worthy investment of their time, especially considering
if they were playing a 9th or not. Because if they were playing a 9th, they have the army.
Yeah. There's a certain retired dice down player who I could imagine might turn up at LGT and have a go at it, because this is the sort of buff that an army like that, which I know he's a huge fan of, would be pretty tempting for him, I imagine. So I'll be interested to see if we see Malik emerging and giving it a run with the newly buffed AdMech.
Don't put that evil on me. I've been killed by his AdMech army at LGT.
I know. I'm sorry, man. I can just smell it. We love a story.
And AdMech were bad. Were bad. By bad, I mean good. I got owned by Malik in the Invitational, and then Manny in round 2 of the main event. Both on
that's a rough weekend.
I particularly want to repeat. So if you could not put that evil on me,
sorry, Wiggs. I just I smell these headlines. I smell it coming. I think those are a lot as far as the sort of the potential heavyweights go. I think that's a lot of the coverage. I think there's a couple of armies that probably merit a shout out that are probably more plugging along, but might have interesting things going on. Drukhari are in limbo. But obviously did get the little buff to the Kronos and actually have been doing reasonably into the field here. I think they kind of end up in a similar spot, just plugging away, reasonably dangerous, nothing too crazy out of them and waiting on a boat.
I mean, if Marines rise up further, then maybe they get a bit of help. I'm trying to remember. Have they got anything that really deals with Order Boys though?
Well, they've got a lot of anti-infantry.
Yeah,
they have a lot of anti-infantry.
Yeah.
So Lilith and then Splinter does get through boys at quite a deceptive rate.
Lilith's unit will do nasty stuff to that squad. Yeah,
but then if the Orcs actually do connect into them en masse, it can be quite painful for them. So yeah, that'd be interesting to see. And I'm not sure how the AdMech game is. So I don't know I don't think they're suddenly rising to the top here, but I think they'll probably be continuing to pick on Knights and Marines where they're able to. And then as far as more recent releases that are feeling, I think, to be fairly middling, we've got New Votann. I'm curious what statistical impact New Votann has made in your assessment so far, but it seems like it's mostly an also ran rather than a sort of trend setter.
Underperforming thus far, but it's kind of too early to tell, really. There is a valid build in Need Guard. It's pretty consistent already. There's a very valid build there. We did see one person win an event with the Berserk detachment, which was a pleasant surprise to see that coming out. There's clearly some stuff in there. Maybe landing a little bit soft, but not soft enough that I think they should have given them an emergency buff. I think give people a few weeks to get used to the best builds first and see where it ends up.
Yeah, I've certainly from my gains with it and from my initial assessments of it, I think there's a rule set there that absolutely can be modelled into a perfectly competitive army. I think potentially they've been a bit overcautious with points initially, but we'll see. And there are a few design issues with them in the combination plays. They've got a little bit of the Tau energy of needing to expose quite a lot to confirm kills on things, which makes their life a bit difficult.
Yeah, a lot of their power is wrapped into a few units. So if your opponent has the right answer to those units, then you can have a rough time.
Yeah,
I have played against the Delve detachment.
Oh yeah,
and I agree with you because I think the energy that I got from that game was, the big 10-man came in, killed the crap out of one thing, and I killed it back, and then I was like, okay, where's the next 2 units? There aren't any. Okay, a bit light on the board.
Berserk's staying the same price while going down.
It's insane for their fragility now. Yeah, one wound with even the 4-up Philippine is annoying, but on one wound, it's just not. So yeah, I think Berserks are in a funny spot. You kind of need them, even though they are.
You just make them cheaper. They just need to be cheaper. I
think that's exactly right. So I suspect that's where Votann gaining 50, 100 points down the line, they'll probably be in a reasonable spot. And then. No,
bloody hell!
No, not 1,500. No, I mean I'd love that. It felt like that was roughly what they got the last time when they buffed them at the start of 10th. They gave them absolute truckloads of stuff then. But I think otherwise in the beige camp, Guard are plugging along absolutely fine, aren't they? I think.
Yeah, Guard have some very solid builds. I mean, they're I have been seeing. Most Guard builds do lose a few points, because almost everyone's on 3 Dawns, and not everyone is on enough of the stuff that went down already to pay it back. So you lose a little bit, but I think kind of fine. I think they're going to be in a good spot.
Yeah, a lot of really interesting stuff for Guard. To be fair, I think the changes to the Regal Dawn was more, please stop running 3 of these, or 5 with the non-character ones, and then the other small changes are the units that you were kind of on the brink of taking, but you wasn't sure if you were going to, like Leontis and the Krieg Grenadiers. They're a lot more interesting now. You might be able to justify them. So I think that's some innovation waiting to happen there, but I think there's a lot of potential.
Yeah, and Guard definitely are a faction where every now and then something completely out of left field comes across my desk, and so there clearly is some depth there that hasn't been explored. There is also obviously the super heavies are cheaper. I think on paper a couple of those are actually good, but it's so dependent on what terrain you're playing on, whether you can really use them at all, that they never quite come out how you think they might. Plus it's always very hard to justify 1 over 2 Dawns, because that's usually what the choice ends up being.
Yeah, so that's interesting times for Guard. I always wonder a little bit about Bridgehead, especially on UKTC. I always felt like that had a little bit more juice than had been fully tapped. I think we've had discussions about that, Jack, but I don't know where that ends up.
It's been getting event 4 ones.
4 ones.
We're keeping an eye on them. I think Bridgehead and Mechanized are kind of having a little bit of exploration at the moment. I think that one's a bit pending for the next couple of weeks to see what happens there. So That's
So Bridgehead took a 5-1 at the Flying Monkey last weekend.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And again, that was and the final was a mirror match loss. So fairly nice broad mix of stuff that it beat.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that one kind of always feels like it's got that angles of attack thing. It's got a bit of that GSC flexibility of strikes, but also you've still got a bunch of guard data sheets to anchor it. It's just getting the list right? So yeah, I think that's interesting. And then I think Tyranids feel maybe not the most exciting slate. I feel like Tyranids have had some great slates, which now means when they have just a normal slate, it feels a bit sad, which is a strange state of affairs. But they've obviously had quite a lot of love over recent times. But where are they at in a competitive sense, stat-wise?
Tyranids are in a weird spot. I was having I had a chat to Greg about this at the Goonhammer Open. I think his thought, and I think he's probably pretty spot on this, is that the problem with Tyranids is that their army rule being so random driven is a real anchor around their neck. And the problem is it's the kind of army rule you can't make it too good, because if it was too good it wouldn't be fun to play against. But it being random makes it really it's much less consistently useful than anyone else's, which is a real problem for them. In terms of performance, they've definitely been underwhelming. If I'm looking at things,
that was my instinct.
You do see a solid clip of people putting up like 4-1s or the occasional win with the same old monster builds. You've seen, but you have seen the Oscillator build. There was a strong finish this week for someone going really all in on Raveners, who won an event with those. Subterranean, Subterranean's given them a bit of flexibility. I think the Subterranean builds probably are the most interesting builds out there. So they're not like unsalvageable, they're not unplayable, but it's odd they didn't get a bit more than they did. I think they probably should have given them something a bit more there.
Yeah, for sure. I think something to get excited about would have been nice there. And
I think they're just waiting for a redesign in 11th at this point.
Yeah,
because I think
some of that rules writing is so flavorful. It just hasn't cut the mustard in a competitive sense consistently, has it? I think
from when I've played against it, I think like the biggest problem to me is the fact that the models are so enormous and they really struggle to apply force where they want to when they want to. So I don't know how you fix that, other than maybe.
If Raveners don't help with that, I don't know what does, because Raveners are literally like a fast blendy unit to add to the mix, and that's.
Raveners have clearly helped.
They've definitely helped.
They've done better since the new Raveners appeared, so I think they clearly are helping. And they add a bit of flexibility, but they're still not. It's one of those things where something is not quite there, but it's really hard to identify exactly what.
Yeah, for sure. We did have a comment from Sam Dunn. Hello, Sam Dunn, asking if we can talk about the imminent and sudden proliferation of Land Raiders. I have seen quite a few people testing Land Raiders over the last couple of days.
Yeah, well, at least you have to look at them and go, well, it's the same price as a Repex now, and people are playing those. So they've got to be builds where it's better than a Repex. So
they have to be.
Yeah, you've got to think, okay, there probably are some.
All the different rules hats you can put on them in different armies as well.
Well, I'm kind of relieved they were still cautious about the Redeemer and kept that relatively high. Like, if you're taking a Redeemer, that's still a real price to pay. It's a good unit because the Overwatch is very scary, but it's quite high. But yeah, the basic one, it kind of does hit a threshold where you're like, well, actually, you do now. There are lists running units that cost the same point as this that might be worth hot swapping. So you've got to have a think, is someone going to hot swap these? And then there's also there's a surprising number of 3-model Devastator Centurion units out there in the metagame at the moment. So right around a Land Raider, you got to wonder, okay, well,
I think that's it.
Or even the Assault ones. I mean, again, Dev Centurions are seeing play, Assault Centurions are seeing occasional use. You could decide that the price is right on a Land Raider with 3 Assault Cents in it.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, for World Eaters, the Land Raider fits the 8-bound as well, which is interesting if you're looking at bringing them back in and you're cutting other vehicles out and you suddenly got space. I think that's an interesting tank. I think that tank might well pop up in a bunch of different builds again, especially with the UKTC where you've got like this huge central sticker thing in it, Ruin as well. Now I think something like a Land Raider sitting behind that.
Although the movement channels for Land Raiders aren't great necessarily with the map, so I think one of the reasons that you do see the Repex over it is that. The Repex is just thinner, so you never
just that little bit tidier.
You don't ever hit the movement problem that you do with the Land Raider. So I think even on UKTC there are some places where a Land Raider struggles to go, so that might hold them back.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess it was one other relatively new entry to this pot that, again, I don't think we've seen a ton of coverage of, and I'm curious how they've got on since arrival is the Grey Knights, right? I think Grey Knights have obviously had a couple of detachments. They've not really been at the races as far as I can see.
They're kind of the inverse of Death Guard in that there's one build which you can run in a few different detachments, which is 3 or 4 Dread Knights and as many Purifiers as you can take. I mean, we're seeing people taking Purifiers and riding them around in Razorbacks, which if that isn't a sign of desperation, I don't really know what is.
I do always, whenever I see a Razorback list, I always query that.
When you see a Razorback, you got to know, it's not in a great spot, is it? No.
One twin-link last cannon shot, no. Let's go.
Grey Knights are really, again, the Grey Knights Codex, I think I reviewed that one. The Grey Knights Codex was a real disappointment. Like, it's a shame because there are some interesting ideas in there. I think what we sometimes say is that sometimes you read a codex and it feels like the goal is, the designers are looking for how to make something really, really strong. Sometimes you read a codex and you feel like the designers are scared of what could happen if they get it wrong.
Yes.
I don't think it's not always the same ones. It's not always true. I think arguably you should maybe have written the Aeldari Codex with the second mindset, and they wrote it with the first, and that's how we got.
You seem surprised.
Fixed.
Yeah.
Which didn't work that well. But Grey Knights definitely feel like it's a book where they it felt more like they were worried about what some things could do than what made it good. But I think the real problem with it basically is that they've kind of written themselves. They needed to take a more fundamental look at the weaponry and how the leaders work to make sure there are more options there. I think so. I'm generally a really big fan of the sort of the simplification of weapon profiles we see on a lot of things in 10th edition. So things like, all the Terminate weapons become accursed weapons, or Van Vet weapons become, veteran weapons, and the Grey Knights, all the Nemesis weapons become Nemesis Force weapons. Mm-hmm. But I actually think with Grey Knights in particular, that is kind of the Jenga block that's been pulled out from making them functional, because I think not being able to tech the infantry units with a bunch of hammers to kill heavy stuff is one of the big problems they've got. Mm-hmm. I think probably they need to go do. Again, it's probably too soon for them to do that kind of reimagining in a Dataslate in this one. If there's a next one, I think somebody asked in the questions earlier what I would change in the next Dataslate. I mean, this is the early one I'll give you. I would give all the Grey Knights melee sweep and strike profiles. I would give every Grey Knight unit a sweep and a strike with their Nemesis weapons to try and give them more ability to flex the targets, because I think that's the real problem with them at the moment, is that they are extraordinarily homogenous in their damage output. So either they're good into something or they're not, and they've just got no way of flexing at all. So I think to capture some of that old weaponry mix, I think you need something like a sweep or a strike to give them the ability to adapt.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And that might help a bit. And the other thing is probably they ought to have just looked at the side cannon and gone, yeah, okay, we're just going to pretend this gun was never started like this, and it's a las cannon now. I mean, they just need to do something like that. I think that's the real problem, is that the detachment rules, I think they're too cautious in places. Like it's mad to me that the Vanishers one is cool, but it's like the one detachment in history where I would be really excited to take an enhancement for a +1 leadership aura, and there isn't one. It's like, where is that? I actually want that in this detachment. So I think it's the detachments are a bit overcautious, but I don't think you can fix it without hitting the data sheets. So that's where I think they'll need to go. They need to just do something to give the infantry more variety of punch without making you pay for it. And I think that's where I'd start, is mix up what the weapons do, because I think they're the one big like casualty of how that simplification's played out, because you definitely used to see in previous editions different specialized units adapted to the metagame or trying different things. Or you could take a character with a hammer in a unit, so then you've got one guy who can hit really hard if they end up in combat with something big and heavy, and you just haven't got that right now.
No, for sure. Yeah, it makes sense. It's interesting. There's a few books that have just landed without making too much of a splash, and will need a little bit more fine tuning, I think.
And it can be salvaged, because Custodes landed badly, but they've been a fairly healthy part of the metagame for a while now. It's not that it's unsalvageable. Sure. The good thing is this edition they've shown willingness that when something is clearly underperforming, they actually go in fairly hard on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd actually forgotten Custodes. Do the changes to guard put them anywhere interesting? Do you think? What's the situation with them? Or are they still more or less where they were?
It's a change I was surprised to see because
yes,
because so sometimes I look at a change and go, I don't know. I mean, again, I think I sometimes get the impression that there's quite a focus on 5.0, 5.0 lists is what some of the changes. But if you actually look at all the 4.1 lists, there are lots of people who've been running at least 1 or 2 squads of Custodian Guard. I mean, I don't think Custodians can't really use plus 10 points, so whatever. But I was slightly surprised to see it. I think they just continue kind of fine.
You sure can run 30 Custodian Guard. That might. It's like 1,200 points.
No feel, no pain. Yeah. On some terrain, that might be quite scary, to be fair.
Yeah. Here's the other one, actually, that we haven't talked about. Is the other one I was really surprised by the point cuts on was Deathwatch, actually.
Okay, so Deathwatch.
That one, because, Deathwatch, as far as I'm concerned, Deathwatch is a top-tier faction that underperforms because nobody owns them. You see the people winning events with them, and you see the lists that go past. And we had at the ITT, we had a match against Deathwatch on the other side. The list is so nasty, and it actually got a really quite considerable point cut as well. So
it's quite a vicious list. That
there are like 5 people in the world who own it, and I guess anyone new thinking about it is worried they'll immediately get squatted again, like they did for a bit this edition. Not only knows whether anyone will actually start playing it, but I was a bit taken aback by them getting this sort of across the board. Oh, this all needs to be cheaper treatment, because no, they don't. They don't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. I don't know if it will change anything because I don't know if anyone will play them anyway. But they were already very good.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, I think that's most of the ground I was intending to cover today. I think, as you've said, it sounds like what we're looking at is a very wide meta with a lot of different things in play. That actually, the way these new different things people are going to try go into each other, we don't fully know yet, and that's actually going to be really interesting. And I think LGT might well be a bit of a melting pot of ideas in that sense, and we might see all sorts of stuff coming through.
We've got LVO the week after as well, haven't we?
I know, and I feel like the meta is going to be quite deliciously in flux for that. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I think unless you have any other questions, Jack, I think that's probably where I'm at for my coverage through this for tonight.
I think basically covered everything I thought of. Yeah, pretty much. I think I missed anything.
Wonderful. Great. Yeah, fantastic news. Okay, well, I think what that remains then is to thank Wings very much for coming on. And give him
a couple more things in the chat, I think.
Okay. Yeah, anything in the chat that we want to cover?
Again, I was just coming back, so I did reference Sam asked a question of what I change in the next slate. I mean, obviously, yes, we're going to wrap up fairly soon, but I think...
that's a great question, to be fair.
What you change now. I mean, I think so we've already covered Grey Knights. They clearly need a big refactor. The other one is the other big one I'd be very confident on is I would definitely do something to take down the double Gatling Despoiler and Chaos Knight and then lift everything else up, because I think the balance there is some of the worst in the game at the moment.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think realistically something in Black Templars is going to have to give. I can't believe they'll get through the next slate without taking.
I don't think they will
somewhere. Probably on the characters, because I think it's the double attaching that's so good. Again, it's the fact that the Castellan just completely removes any of their drawback of not having oaths. Is the Castellan, whichever one of the characters it is the Castellan that gives them the reroll hits is so it's so good. And the fact that the characters themselves have just 7 attacks for some reason.
They are bananas. They're absolutely bananas what they can do.
So yeah, I mean, those are some other changes I'd probably reach out and do. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I'd definitely do. I mean, obviously, I'd take on the bold task of trying to fix Imperial Agents, because
just give them oath. That's what everyone else.
Give them oath. Give them oath.
Yeah. Actually, to be fair, we did actually. That was interesting. We did within. We had a chat about this actually. What we thought you should do for Imperial Agents is just let them take all the Tempestus Scion data sheets.
That would be quite interesting.
I think they would. It fits with the flavor, like the very old, inquisitorial books from third, was it that they're based on? You could take
stormtroopers.
Stormtroopers, and I think Scions would really. I think no spike damage is one of the really big things they struggle with. Like, they can take Deathwatch kill teams, but that's it. So I actually think legitimately,
give them some real activations to play with.
If you want to do a big change, I mean, they're in such a bad spot that they're in the kind of spot where you can just do whatever you like and you're not going to break the game. Just literally just write them their version of data sheets for everything that looks like a Tempestus Scion and a Taurox Prime and see what happens.
Yeah, that would be quite fun. I think.
Try and do to fix Imperial Agents.
Give them a bit of cutting edge.
Give them some edge.
Yeah, very nice. I had a question from Scribbos. Do you think the upscaled Kill Team Deathwatch will get a new data sheet now they're out?
Almost certainly.
Almost certainly. That's how it's been working for everything else, hasn't it? Yeah, Kill Teams continue to completely and utterly distort the game in wonderful and unexpected ways, so that's a lot of fun.
Oh, I want to know what the Necron ones do.
Yes, you know what, Wings? I don't think we ever actually spoke. We never spoke about Necrons tonight as well because they are the perpetual.
Actually, they kind of have scooted through a little bit. Well, I say that the Silent King change is such a massive nerf that I can.
Is that losing the mods?
Losing the mods, all right. I think on paper it's mad that Necrons didn't take more of a hit. I do sort of feel like that is one of those changes that's such a big Jenga block pulled out that maybe you two look at it go there. And then I think the other thing is their other big build that isn't the Silent King is 20 warriors with lots of support that folds to Gaz with 20 boys. Like that army just cannot.
Yeah, that's been a really polarizing list, hasn't it? The Awakened list, because when a proper volume combat army is in, that doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean that army just folds straight up to Gaz and 20 boys. Doesn't really matter the Orc list. I can't see them ever winning that game. So that probably, I think that's probably why they didn't get a nerf where they arguably should have done between that and the fact that the Silent King change. It's a weird one because you don't need the ignore mods in every matchup, but in the matchups where you needed it, the Silent King is nearly dead without it in some of them. So it's real, like before. Yeah, right back at the start of the edition, before they put the FAQ in that made ignore mods work on damage, people were hesitant to take him because he's all damage 2 in his melee. So if he hits something with damage reduction without access to ignore mods, he can be a bit anemic. He does still do plenty for the army, but I think that's probably why they didn't take. I think that's where it's kind of justifiable not to nerf an army that was on paper a little bit overperforming.
Yeah,
not to nerf outside of the one big nerf.
Yeah, for sure. No, that'd be an interesting one to say. They are another army with very polarized matchups now, right, at this stage, I think. Okay, fantastic. Wings, I suppose, just in case people aren't aware of where you do your business, you should tell people a little bit about Goonhammer and the wonderful things they're in.
Come and read goonhammer.com, where we write about Warhammer 40k. And lots of other games as well. Obviously, my focus is on the Warhammer 40k competitive content. I, along with Tom, I write our weekly competitive innovations column, where we cover the top results from all the GT or bigger tournaments every week. I also obviously have a lot of work into things like our codex reviews and our analysis articles of big changes like the Dataslate. But if you are not just interested in 40k, we have everything else under the sun about it.
Literally everything. Yeah.
We try and cover as many things as possible. We have lots of painted guides and page content as well. We're currently on our YouTube channel. We've partnered with Colin, whose surname I've forgotten. That's very bad of me. Eagle Eyes Mischief is the channel name. He is a pro painter who had a big archive of page videos he wasn't doing anything with, so we partnered with him, and we're gradually putting those through on the YouTube channel as well. So there's lots of good painted content if you want to know how to get your stuff up to a good standard quickly.
Amazing.
You'd be happy to know that my the school that I work at had a formal request from the Warhammer Club to unblock Goonhammer because it was pretty.
That's what we like to hear.
That's adorable. That's really cute.
Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. And as ever, we're 6++. Hit like, subscribe, leave us a comment, all that good stuff. We love you very much. Thanks for your patience with us getting this show out. It's not usual for us to have to wait a couple of days, but we've got it done. A lot of really useful knowledge gleaned. Thank you, Jack, for coming on as well. It's been really wonderful to have you. I hope your Bullrin's starting to look pretty over there.
He's getting there.
He's getting there, one step at a time. Got a week to go. And we will be back next week to start making wild guesses about LGT. And it's going to be great. See you then. Bye-bye, everybody. Sleep well.